conversation with an analysis and an understanding of the situation in the country. And in studio today, I'm joined by Professor Seth McLeod. On my extreme left, he is a kidney specialist. Welcome to the show. In the middle is Mary Nginyo, who's a post-transplant. You had a kidney transplant 4 years ago. And next to me is John Gikenya. 2 weeks ago, you as well underwent a transplant. We appreciate you all being here to be part of our conversation. Professor, I'll begin with you. When we're having such a week, and you've been able to watch that story prepared by Catherine, it's all about awareness. It's all about having a conversation about an issue that is affecting a country. In terms for you, where we stand in the fight against the various kidney diseases and conditions, where would you say Kenya is at?
Right, I must say that as of the moment, the situation on the ground is that we are having kidney centers throughout the country in most of the provinces, except Western Province. We don't have one in Kakamega, and we don't have one in Garissa. But it's something which will happen soon. As has been said, we have got 25 specialists, and we have at least one specialist in every province. Most of us have been trained outside the country, and more recently, we have been training our people in South Africa. As we are now, the University of Nairobi has started an institute of kidney diseases. So we shall be training for ourselves and the training for the rest of the country. The major problem being the proportion of specialists to the number of patients we have. I can tell you for certain that in Kenya, if you took about 10 people, one of them would have chronic kidney disease.
One in every 10 people?
One in every 10.
That is a lot. That's
Only
very
that
high.
The stages vary. You see, we tend to put a lot of emphasis on dialysis and transplantation. We must realize that there's a large group of people who have got chronic kidney disease who do not require dialysis or transplantation as yet. As far as transplantation is concerned, the only place where we can do it in the country at the moment is within Nairobi, the major hospitals in Nairobi. But sooner or later we should have it in all the former 8 provinces, maybe eventually in the county. As I've mentioned earlier on, the issue here is personnel. And when we talk of kidney diseases, we tend to think of the doctors. We must realize we also have the nurses whom we have to train. We have the laboratory staff and other cadres of staff. And other cadres of staff.
And you'll elaborate for us in a short while more about the various kidney diseases and more so the chronic ones. But Mary, let's come to you. So 4 years ago, you got a transplant, but talk to us through that journey. You know, what was the condition and just going through up to the transplant stage?
My story began in the year 2008 when I was discovered with by a nephrologist by a nephritis, nephritis condition where you find protein in your urine. And I did not take it seriously like any other Kenyan. When you're told you have a condition, you take it lightly because the only thing that was happening is that I was swelling my feet. If I work hard, I'll get swollen. If I don't work hard, I'll not get swollen. So it started that way. Then in the year 2009, I got pregnant with my second child. And that is when the condition became severe. On the second month of pregnancy, I was told I have total renal failure. And I started dialyzing while pregnant. I am one person who has dialyzed in Kenya pregnant.
Wow.
So when I began dialyzing, I met a team of doctors, Dr. Twahir, Professor McLeod, Dr. Gige, Dr. Wala. All those doctors saw me through it. It's hard. The baby came at 5 months, and Dr. Ngai, the gynecologist, saw me through, removed the baby at the 25 weeks, incubated the baby. From there, it was a long journey because after they removed the baby is when they discovered lupus. When they discovered lupus, I had to dialyze for an extra 6 months. I had severe hypertension. I had severe water retention. I was getting sick all the time. my immune system was not good. And at that point, I was in need of medical help. And when I say in need of medical help, is because the situation was very, very severe. And that time, the end of 2009, is when the team of doctors in the Interlife program came. And I remember I was talking to Dr. Twahir, who said, there's a team of doctors coming from Spain, and because your hypertension situation is very severe, you can't fly, let's try at KNH. So I told him, what do you mean we try? He said, if you're up to it, you can do a transplant at KNH. Like any other person, you doubt, because you're always hearing outside there is where the treatment will come easier and faster. But I thank God, because I had a good family and my supportive husband, and they did the groundwork of, you're sick, you're in the house, they have to do the groundwork to go to KNH, find out about this program. And he did that, and he came back with the information. And that's how I met Professor McLeod. I met Dr. Gige and the whole team at KNH.
Okay.
And I began my journey with Interlife. At that point, my transplant happened in March 2010, 10th of March.
That is 2 years later.
No,
From
a
2008.
year. 2008, yeah, from the discovery to transplant.
Right.
It's 2 years.
Yes.
And the enormous progress that I saw at KNH, or the family I met at KNH at that time, because I was so sick, and the support was what I was moved, because they took me in, did the tests, and the surgery was done in 3 weeks from the beginning to the end. And in 10 days, believe you me, I was out working.
Wow. So 2-3 weeks you were good and you were done. Who?
My sister.
Okay.
Gracia's girl there, and she gave me her kidney.
Yeah.
And a year later she got pregnant. So it's amazing.
It's amazing. Thank you for sharing your story. John, what about you?
Mine is not of that big. I'll just explain it briefly.
Yes.
Mine started at the end of 07.
Yes.
I started feeling bad. I was unwell. Then I decided to seek further medical attention at Kenyatta National Hospital, whereby I was aided by my uncle, who is also a doctor in Kenyatta, orthopedic and trauma surgeon, who is Dr. Kenya. And I was taken to Dr. Bogwa, who is a kidney specialist. After diagnosing me, he said I'm having a kidney failure. So he decided the catheter to be inserted in my body to dialyze. So starting 2008, I dialyzed until this year.
Okay.
That is March 26, when I was transplanted. So I have dialyzed for about 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how has that been, the process of dialysis? How is it usually for you? Because to go year in, year out, and this you must do, otherwise then you lose your life.
Anyway, if you don't have anything else, automatically you have to dialyze, because the blood is always having the levels of chemicals are high.
Right.
When they are high, you feel bad, you feel very weak, you can't work.
How come it took so long, 6 years, to the transplant?
I was looking for the donor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who eventually
I
was?
went to all my sisters and cousins. No one responded. Then I turned to my wife, who I love very much, and she decided to donate a kidney.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really nice. Daktari, going back to the various conditions and the diseases, which would you say is the most prevalent? When you're looking at, you mentioned 1 in every 10 will have at least a condition in as far as the kidneys are concerned.
Right. Let me put it this way. The most common cause of kidney diseases is infection, and infection, be it directly to the kidney or the throat and the skin, as is commonly the case.
Right.
But coming up now are these mega diseases like hypertension and diabetes. Then in the very young, of course, you can be born with some abnormalities of the urinary tract. But it is very important to remember the first three: infections, diabetes, and hypertension. Those are what I would consider to be the major causes.
Yeah, and what would you say are some of the misconceptions or myths that people associate with kidney infection, some of those things and information that needs to be clarified so that you have more people having these diseases or conditions caught earlier to avoid extreme serious cases?
In fact, the reality is that kidney infections are not as important a cause of end-stage kidney disease the way we think. The most important causes are diabetes and hypertension.
Okay.
And these are lifestyle-dependent diseases. I mean, you can prevent them in various ways: exercise, diet, and all the other things. But infections, of course, have to be treated immediately. You see, most often we have sore throats and we say that will go. You have some pimples on the skin and you say that will go. And yet these are the commonest causes of the kidney diseases that we are seeing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of facilitation, before I continue with the other guests, infrastructure, the manpower, we said very few, 25 specialists in a country of over 40 million people. What is the hope? What is the ministry? We've heard from the report from Catherine, promises have been made for some work and some improvement in the sector, but nothing much has been done. As a doctor, what do you think urgently must be done to better the situation?
Let me make this clear. Chronic kidney disease is common. It is treatable, but it is costly. And that's where the problem lies.
Right.
Yeah? Because I'll put it to you blankly that if 10 people came to me with chronic kidney disease at the end, I'll probably treat only one. And you're being told that at Kenyatta they have to pay 3,000 shillings per session. And the National Hospital Insurance is now paying a big bulk of that, so it makes it cheaper. But very few Kenyans can even afford 1,000 shillings twice a week for treatment only. So if 10 people came to me even at Kenyatta, I would end up treating just one out of them. And no country in the world can pretend to be capable of affording the treatment of chronic kidney disease. Even in the United States, they don't treat everybody who has it. And I'll give you an example. In East and Central Africa, if you exclude South Africa and Northern Africa, we are probably the only country who does what we are doing at the moment in terms of dialysis and transplantation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mary, 6 years on, how are you doing? How are you coping?
4 years.
4 years,
Yeah,
yes,
4
beg your
years.
pardon, yes.
I'm good. All I have to tell any post-transplant is that not to forget medication. That is the other part that people, when you're transplanted, people forget it after 1 year.
Right.
Because we have to live on the drug, on the immunosuppressant drugs. And Dr. here will tell everybody out there who has been transplanted, you've got to take your drugs, because that kidney is depending on those drugs. Now, I'm thankful to Novartis for giving us the Interlife program, because the drugs are not very expensive. They used to be at 60,000 a month. Now it's at 35,000 a month. We call upon the government to do something, but because hard times are everywhere, we say through the public partnership programs, they can come up with subsidies against the two main drugs, because there are only two main drugs. The rest are other conditions like hypertension and diabetes.
Right.
They can subsidize the two main drugs to go a bit lower than the 30,000. Then the rest somebody can survive, because it's not every Kenyan can survive on those drugs. But all in all, I thank God.
You thank God.
Yeah, 4 years later.
4 years later. And John, it's just recently that you got the transplant, your wife being the donor. But before that, you told us it was years of dialysis. And as we are understanding, it is a costly affair to, and process all the time to have to go for that. That must have just drained also just your accounts in terms of trying to maintain and control this condition.
Okay. Let's say dialysis is something that is very costly because every week you have to part with 10,000 shillings.
Wow.
Yeah, since you have to dialyze twice per week. And that is the time you feel good when you dialyze.
So for
if you
all those
dialyze
years,
once, you can't work. So once you dialyze twice per week, you can work, you can do many things.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you spent 10,000 shillings a week for how many years?
For 6 years.
For 6 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And now you're still on medication because I understand after the transplant, then there's medication you need to constantly as well be on. Okay. Wow, wow. Dr. we want to bring this to a close, Professor. The most important thing for you, for the public to know, it's a week to raise that awareness, it's a week to give that information out. What for you do you feel is most important for people, even in terms of lifestyle? Because a lot of the diseases and conditions you mentioned, it's all about lifestyle changes we've seen over the years. What do people need to be more cautious of, aware of, to ensure those numbers decrease?
The most important message here is that chronic kidney disease is common. As I said initially, 10%.
Yeah.
And I want to assure the public that it is treatable locally and outside the country.
But in terms of preventing from now, we're talking about
in terms
curing,
of prevention,
yes.
I listed out the causes. If you're suffering from hypertension, you have to be, the blood pressure is to be controlled, because if it is, there's no way in which you will ever develop kidney failure. If you're a diabetic, the blood sugars have to be controlled, in which case you will take long or you will never develop chronic kidney disease.
Yeah.
But I mentioned that infections are the most common cause. I said all infections should be treated, rather than the tendency we have of saying it is just a sore throat or some small pimple. They have to be treated to forestall the development of kidney disease.
Yeah.
And as you correctly said, the World Kidney Day is just to make people aware that it is common, we can sort it out, and it is easily diagnosable. All you need is a sample of urine, you put in a stick inside, do the blood sugar, which is what we are going to do come this Thursday. I mean, people just walk in and out, and I can easily say whether you have a kidney problem or not. So these are tests which do not have to be done in Nairobi or major hospitals, can be done even in health centers.
And what would bring the costs down of dialysis, of this treatment? What would...
In my view, the cost is unlikely to come down in the near future. You see, we are talking of Kenyatta National Hospital charging 2,000, 3,000, and NHIF is meeting most of the cost. The actual cost of a single dialysis is close to 12,000, 15,000. And as Mary here said, it is not just dialysis. There's none of my patients who is on less than 6 medications at a go for various reasons. And this adds to the cost of the whole treatment. Because when we talk of chronic kidney disease, people keep on thinking dialysis, transplantation. But there's more to it than just dialysis and transplantation.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate you all for being part of our show this morning. Of course, a conversation that needs to definitely happen some more in coming days. But Professor Seth Makligeo, who's a kidney specialist, Mary Nginyo, as well as John Gikenye, we appreciate you all for being with us. And we're glad you are watching Morning Express. In the next few moments, when we return from this short commercial break, John Mutu, the Onakada boss, will be with us. He finally got out of that traffic snarl up, so we'll have a few moments with him as well before we bring the show to a close. Don't go away.